listeners, and welcome back to my podcast. Today, I will be discussing the importance of time management, ways to effectively manage time, and the importance of scheduling time for oneself. Stay tuned to hear more. As I've said in my podcast before, the pandemic has totally shifted the way in which college classes are set up. In fact, it has changed the way most people live day to day. The International Journal of Psychiatry published an article outlining mental health in students during this pandemic. It states students are at a higher risk of dropping out, abandoning their daily routines, feeling increasingly pressured to learn independently, and lacking the motivation to do schoolwork. I spoke with Dr. Astik Joshi, a psychiatrist, to understand the link between mental health and the ability for a person to productively manage their time.
If you have the right mental health, your time management and productivity would be optimal. Absence of ability to manage your time or be productive, in other words, be functional, is the definition of having a mental health disorder.
Dr. Joshi said, in order to be better at time management and in order to increase productivity, a good state of mental health is key.
Be mentally healthy. That's the simple answer. For that, you would need to know what's decreasing the productivity. It's different for different people. So what got into the way of that? That's where the solution is.
Dr. Joshi said he learned a basic trick in med school that helped him manage his time and increase productivity in a better, more efficient way.
A lot of time in med school, that tends to be a big deal for the students, just the workload and being able to manage the time. So it's a well-discussed topic in our field. So writing down your tasks and goals for the day in the morning goes a long way. A lot of us keep 3x5 cards, and in the morning we kind of write down the tasks for the day and kind of check it off. It's a basic technique, but it's effective.
After discussing how much harder it seems to get stuff done in a timely manner during this time of COVID-19 and online classes, Kyle Schindler, a counselor and the director of MindSpa services at Texas Tech's Student Counseling Center, explained why he believes that is the issue.
I would say that it's not surprising to hear you say that even having not had an issue with it, that it currently is more of an issue. And it's because I think that a lack of structure is the hardest thing for us to function through. And the structure of our day is very different now and very up in the air. And so this ties into a previous answer I gave about how to kind of make it through, which is to be very mindful of setting a consistent schedule. And scheduling things in general can be a great way of introducing that sort of external expectation that classes or professors or other folks would typically do for you. So like, for example, let's say you were on campus, you had a class, and then you had an hour between that and the other class. Well, that's an hour you're on campus, and so it was sort of a time for you to maybe do things, right? You don't have that now as much. So I would say on your end, it would be more beneficial for a student to set their own time schedule. And that can be, say, for example, once a day, every day between 5 to 6 p.m., that is only time for me to study, or that is only time for me to work on this long-term project. And setting that up as a formal time in your brain is more likely to allow you to meet it. The same way like scheduling any kind of meeting, that formality actually sits in our brain pretty well. And a second thing is to break things down into small chunks. It's very much a matter of perspective psychologically. When we perceive that we have an entire paper to write, that can be overwhelming. And when things are overwhelming, it's a natural human disposition to avoid overwhelming things. So that's sort of the element of procrastination there. If you break an essay or a paper or a project down into its constituent elements, that can be a great way of increasing motivation, because it's a lot easier to say, well, I'm going to write the abstract of this paper today, as opposed to, I just need to finish this paper, right? One of them is more motivating.
Schindler said scheduling time for oneself when thinking about time management is important and aids in stress management.
The concept that we use in our field is self-care. It's a term we throw around a lot, and a big reason for that is it is considered a very important component in stress management. Stress is a lot harder to manage when it is chronic and consistent, and so creating a space for it and then not having all spaces included is very important. And so consistent with the scheduling piece, I think one of the ways to manage that is like creating that time for yourself. Doing enjoyable activities specifically is a very important thing. Doing things that are important to you or enjoyable. And that also ties into kind of the last question, where if you're scheduling academic activities, you're also scheduling times when you're not supposed to be thinking about them. It's just as important to like schedule self-care time as well. And it, not necessarily formally. Saturdays are my day to do what I need to. Friday night after 8, I do all my work before 8, and then I'm done for the night. The difficult part for folks is doing self-care and then only focusing on self-care because they'll sometimes think about plans they have, or they'll start, and that can sort of negate the benefits of it.
I spoke with Grace Morris, a reporter for KLBK, to get an idea of what her work days are like.
Yeah, I can get pretty busy. It all kind of depends. Every day is 100% different. There are some days where you go in and you know that you're going to be covering the 10 a.m. press conference. And then there are some days where you come in and no one's calling you back and people just are saying, no, I don't want to talk about this. And then there are those days too where everything's like going well. Like you've got your interview set up and you know what's happening. But you just have to make sure that you've planned them right so that you can get from one place to the next place with enough time so that like you can get the information that you want and not be rushed. So yeah, always got to be kind of on top of what's going on.
Morris said being able to manage her time is critical to her job.
At the end of the day, it's your job and your responsibility to make slot. And so if you can't plan ahead and can't kind of know how long it's going to take you to do stuff or have a thought on what you're going to do during the day, then you're going to miss slot. And at the end of the day, you miss slot too many times and you're gone. So it's really a lot about thinking through those things, knowing yourself a little bit and how that's going to kind of be planned out.
In order to make sure she stays on track, Morris said she plans her days out in her head.
Yeah, I set up like mini deadlines for myself kind of in my head throughout the day. It helps now that I've been doing this for a couple months to kind of know, generally how long it's going to take me to do stuff or how close down to the wire, I guess you could say, that I can get before it's pushing the envelope too much. And so those little like kind of deadlines really help me a lot and I'm not always like perfect with my own deadlines, but it kind of helps me to be like, okay, so I need to, pick up the pace a little bit. And so those, I think, really help me a lot to manage my time.
As you've just heard, there are a few simple ways in which a person can more efficiently manage their time. It is also important to remember to make sure self-care is being scheduled into each person's day, no matter how small. Thanks for listening, and a big thank you to Kyle Schindler, Dr. Astik Joshi, and Grace Morris. Tune in next time.